Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another predictions video, and in today's video I'm going to be predicting the Ennis versus Avanesyan fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do need, like the video, and let's get straight into it. So going into this fight, Ennis is 31-0 with 28 KOs and Avanesyan is 34-1 with 18 KOs. This fight is for the IBF World Welterweight title. Ennis' last fight was a win via KO in round 10 versus Villa, and Avanesyan's last fight was a win via stoppage in round 4 versus Ambomo. This fight is in Ennis' home country of USA and home state of Philadelphia. Avanesyan is 35 and Ennis is 27. This is Ennis' first fight with Matchroom. Avanesyan's losses have come versus Crawford in 2022, Kavaliauskas in 2018, Peterson in 2017, and Klimov in 2009. And to speak a bit more about what I've just been saying, like I mentioned, this IBF title on the line. This is Boot's title. This is him returning back to fighting for the first time in a little while, and it's nice to see him back fighting. Like I say, he's now with Matchroom, and he's seemingly just been kind of waiting around for opportunities, kind of waiting around for promotional deals and things like that to go ahead. But now he seems comfortable, he seems happy with Matchroom, and Matchroom, as Eddie Hearn does with every one of his fighters, seem keen to push him along and to progress him along. And so this fight obviously wasn't what was expected. Avanesyan is coming in on short notice for this fight. Obviously, we were expecting Crowley for this fight. I think Avanesyan is a very good fighter to come in on short notice, but obviously the Crowley fight would have been, in my opinion, the much bigger fight, and I would be surprised if we don't see the Crowley one next. I don't think realistically there is talks of Crawford and Spence and things like that, but at the moment, Ennis is a big welterweight, but I just don't believe that he's going to go up to super welterweight and fight Crawford or Spence after this, in my opinion. But, obviously we have to wait and see. Ennis has to get through this very tough test in Avanesyan first, and, like I say, Ennis' last performance, probably one of his best, if not his best performance so far. Very good performance against Villa, who is very tough and was coming to fight and was continuing walking through plenty of big shots in which Ennis was throwing, but in the end Ennis managed to get the nice stoppage and was just too much for Villa, and like I say, put out a very good performance after a performance against Chukadzian before that, I believe, which was still quality, but it wasn't quite as crisp and sharp as perhaps what we're used to from Ennis. He did show a couple more vulnerabilities, and Avanesyan coming off that win, it's weird how his career's really gone, to be honest. I mean, he's gone from fighting in Russia to having quite a few fights in the UK to fighting in America, fighting Crawford, and there's also been multiple different occasions where he's fought in different countries and things like that. So he's just somebody who's had managerial opportunities given to him and he's taken them, and I have full respect for that. And for a fighter like him, I'm sure he's always prepared. I'm sure he's always kind of waiting for fight opportunities. He's not been the most active as of recent, but I believe, like I said, he was always prepared and possibly could have even known this opportunity was coming. And yeah, nonetheless, credit to him yet again getting a world title shot where perhaps things, it's not expected, but it just shows that you always do have to be ready in boxing for whatever could happen. And the fact that he is still coming for a stoppage win, even like I say, even though it was a small hall show in Birmingham and it was against a journeyman, there's nothing wrong about that. It's, of course, getting him back to winning ways. And after the Crawford loss, which was quite a devastating defeat for him, obviously Crawford, pound for pound, won the best and a sensational fighter, but just the way he got stopped after performing really well, to be fair to Avanesyan, and putting on a tough performance, the way he got stopped it was devastating, and that takes a lot to rebuild and a lot to get back. So if he was to jump straight from that Crawford one to the Ennis one, then we could be saying like, oh, of course his chin's maybe gone and things like that. But at least, like I say, he's had a little bit of a chance to rebuild to an extent and get at least one more win back in the win column before he goes on to this fight. And like I say, Ennis, home state of Philadelphia, wanting to really put on a show, bring big boxing back to Philadelphia, and just, like I say, put on some great events, which I'm sure he's going to want to continue to do with Matchroom now. And it seems, like I said, like Eddie Hearn is willing and wanting to do that as well. And so he's definitely not going to want to disappoint in front of that home crowd. Like I say, he's the much younger guy as well. Avanesyan's had more losses, and to be fair, Avanesyan's only really ever lost against the top guys. I mean, Klimov was very early on in his career, so there's no real discredit to that. The Russian early on fights in which you get given are very, very tough. Peterson, world champion, nothing wrong with that, and Kavalauskas was quite a bad defeat from what I can remember, but at the same time, that was a while ago as well. And also on this card, just one fight in which I wanted to speak about being Nicholson versus Vargas for the WBC World Featherweight title, which Nicholson is defending now, and I think Nicholson is going to win via unanimous decision. I believe that Vargas is a valiant opponent compared to that of McCarlid. Was an interesting choice of opponent. She was tough and she'd only ever lost to Serrano, but I just knew that Nicholson was that level above and was going to be able to make easy work of her, and she did, and so I was impressed with that. But I think Vargas does offer a bit more of a mid-range type threat, unlike of that of a McCarlid, and so that could play a little bit of a factor. But I do believe Nicholson's discipline and singular shot type work, and even if she does put her shots together, I've seen Vargas struggle a little bit when shots are put together against her. And like I say, if you can keep the range, Nicholson, which he is typically very good at doing, then like I say, unanimous decision. I don't think she's going to be able to get the stoppage, as we kind of all have come to realise that Nicholson, she perhaps does have a bit of power to her, but she's not really going to be letting go of them power punches that much, and she's not the physically strongest of fighters, so there's nothing wrong with that. But like I say, I believe unanimous decision victory for her. To go back to the main event, Ennis as a fighter, I mean, there's plenty of things to talk about Ennis with, and I'm probably missing out on a lot, and just a few things that I want to touch upon. Of course, the speed, crazily fast speed, really, really fast hands. I feel like there's that youthfulness, just type of speed about him, which is just so difficult to be able to match. And I think against any opponent in which he faces, he's probably going to have that speed advantage, most likely. Athleticism is excellent. The power in which he holds, and the fact that he carries that power throughout. He can go into the later rounds, the 8th and 9th round, to be still carrying the power in which he has into the first to second round, and that's really impressive because a lot of fighters can tire, and then perhaps the technique in which they're throwing the punches can kind of drop a bit, and the power can just become a little bit more rugged and a bit less controlled. But like I say, Ennis seems to carry that power really well throughout the fight, has great combinations, a great finisher at the same time. He's also strong, and that's nice to see. I think against an Avanesyan, who's quite a physical fighter, you have to be quite strong to be able to deal with that. He's explosive, accurate with his work. He can take a shot as well, though. I've seen him a couple of times now take a shot. I mean, against Villa, he was taking a few shots and was continually coming forward. So I believe he does have a good chin on him. And Avanesyan, like I say, is physically strong, will be putting on pressure, will be letting off power shots. And I think it would be interesting to see if Ennis can take that many shots against him, and if he is going to or not. He is, in my opinion, becoming more patient with each performance. And like I say, with that Villa performance, the shots in which he was picking, the angles in which he was finding, typically the angles he finds are excellent, but they just seem to be on another level, and he counters well, changes levels really well. What I was really impressed with, which was similar to what Crawford did with Avanesyan. Crawford often worked his jab to the body and found that opening consistently, and that's what Ennis did with Villa. And so if he could possibly do that with Avanesyan, then that could be shown to be a bit of an avenue to point score, to be able to cause damage, and just to be able to perhaps find little bits of openings in a high tight guard, which Avanesyan and Villa both had. He doesn't panic under pressure, which is something which is really good as well, because Avanesyan is going to put on that pressure, and so he has to really deal with that, and he really doesn't panic at all and resets well if he has to, and he's good at getting out of danger. He definitely doesn't sit on the ropes too long, and like I say, manoeuvres himself out of danger well. He controls the pace a lot of the time. He changes level with the jab, like I mentioned. He can fight mid-range or in close. Much better mid-range in my opinion than that of Avanesyan. And to speak now negatively, perhaps a little bit about him, this isn't really a negative, but he does just have such high expectations now, and I think with every single fight he's winning, the expectation grows. So unless he is fighting somebody like a Crawford, then he's always going to be the favourite and always going to have such a high expectation on him. And with the fact of Avanesyan coming in on short notice and not he's recently coming off a bad stoppage versus Crawford, there is going to be such an expectation on him, and he's going to take a lot for him to deliver, but we'll have to wait and see. Like I say, I think he has been less active than he wanted to have been, and so I think ring wise that's not the nicest thing to be dealing with. He doesn't really respect his opponents. I think against Chukadze, that's where he found little bits of problems because he didn't really respect the opponent. He kind of was chasing the knockout a little bit and walking onto punches at the same time because he just really wasn't respecting Chukadze. And so, not respecting the power isn't always a bad thing, but when you're putting yourself in more vulnerable positions to try and get a better stoppage, that's not a good thing. So I think perhaps that's what he was doing a little bit. I think he could cut the ring off a slightly bit better. Perhaps he might be overconfident coming into this fight, and in that Villa fight, he was dropping his guard at times, was kind of showboating a little bit, and there's not always things wrong with that either. But like I say, he is going to be against an Avanesyan who's probably going to get frustrated if that happens, and then probably throw more power and put on more pressure if he's doing that. Ennis, he in the process does drop his guard, and I think he can stay on the inside a bit too long. I think against Villa that at times he was staying on the inside a little bit too long, and that's when he can kind of get drawn into a bit of a fight as well, drawn into a bit of a war type fight. And even if it's just for a split second where that's happening, I think Avanesyan could definitely find success if Ennis is doing that. To speak about Avanesyan, he's, like I said, used to being the underdog. There's been plenty of fights now in which Avanesyan has been the underdog. He's been able to come through it and then has been able to pick off some really impressive victories. And when you think about certain performances, he has been the underdog and he has been able to win, and it's impressive. So I don't think this is going to be anything in that aspect too different or too dissimilar to what he's used to. Like I say, he has a high guard, which typically is nice because it is hard to get shots off when you get in a high guard. But if Ennis can do what he was doing against Villa, then we'll have to wait and see if the high guard really plays too much of a good role for Avanesyan. He fights really well in close. He typically overwhelms, pressure, aims to respond to pretty much every shot. Has solid body work as well, so he definitely could try and slow down Ennis with body work. He calmly walks you down. He doesn't really get too flustered or too stressed under pressure, I think. He's aggressive, forces his way in. I think he could definitely put Ennis onto the back foot. And Ennis, like I said, is comfortable on the back foot and comfortable most of the time, but I think he would definitely put Ennis on the back foot in my opinion. He's physical, Avanesyan. He's constant and just constantly in your face. He lands with more effect, I think, in trades. There's a lot of the times where I've seen him going for a 50-50 and he's typically the one that comes out on top out of the two. And so, like I say, in trades, he seems to land more consistently or better. He can draw you into a fight, and he has nice short shots as well, which he throws. He doesn't always kind of load up particularly crazy on his shots, and does throw short shots, especially uppercuts as well, which are nice. Negatives about him, like I said, he's coming in on late notice. Was he in a camp or not? I'm not too sure. Will that play a role? I'm not too sure either. And of course, they're coming off the bad defeat as well, not too long ago. That could play a role with the inactivity as well. He can drop his guard. He can drop his guard. He doesn't always, but he can drop his guard. And there's definitely moments in which I think he does. He's not as technical. He's a slower starter than I think of Ennis, who I think is typically quite a fast starter and finds his range very quickly and finds his rhythm very quickly. Ennis, he stands straight on Avanesyan. I don't think his footwork in general is that good. He's been outboxed, like I say, been hurt. Big targets be hit. He has a lack of a jab when he is trying to just kind of force his way in. So Ennis can definitely time and counter shots because he doesn't really have to deal with a jab coming up against him. I don't think, like I say, he's best at mid-range. So if Ennis can work his movement round, he definitely could possibly maintain Avanesyan at a mid-range. I think he can be. His accuracy in close is good, but when he's coming in with shots, I think his accuracy can be a little bit more wild. He can duck his head down, then be caught with uppercuts if he's doing that. He can also be open to the body, and he does get countered quite often. Ennis is the favourite for this fight, and I think that Ennis will win via TKO in round 8. I think he could do it similarly to that of Crawford. I think in his back of his mind, he's going to be wanting to put out a better performance than Crawford. Obviously, Avanesyan made it tough for Crawford and did, make him work, and it wasn't an easy night for him. And Ennis, like I said, is going to want to put on a better performance. Will he? I don't know, but I just believe, yeah, like I said, in general, he's going to be the faster fighter. Avanesyan has been hurt now. Ennis is going to go to the body, find openings, find gaps, counter really well, manipulate the power really well, and then be able to get a stoppage, like I said, into the later rounds, where Avanesyan is still going to be tough, still going to be coming forwards, but then I'm going to see Ennis countering with something, timing with something similarly to that of what Crawford did to him. Then who could go on to fight? Obviously, like I say, Crawford talks, things like that, super welterweight talks, Ortiz Jr., Zoo, Bahachuk, guys like that, Spence Jr., Fundora. There's huge fights, I think, in the pipeline, but I don't think he's going to go from that Avanesyan fight straight to that. I think Eddie Hearn's going to want to progress him a little bit more. Probably the Crowley fight will happen next. If not, Stanionis one could be good. I'll be up for that fight. Sissoko is another guy who was fine on Matchroom not too long ago, and so that could be an option. If not, I mean, Conor Ben, maybe. I mean, I know how much Eddie Hearn loves Conor Ben, so you never know. But yeah, there's definitely going to be huge options in the future. Probably a big fight still next. But like I say, we'll have to wait and see. I think the future is bright for Jaron Ennis. But yeah, that's it for today's video. I hope you did enjoy. Like if you didn't, like this, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.